Been married for 8 years and for at least 5 of them. We've been fighting over whether my husband's parents should move in with us. Jason didn't call to discuss it with me. He called to inform me his parents were arriving the day after tomorrow. My stance had always been crystal clear. We could move them closer. I'd even pay for a decent rental in our neighborhood, out of my own pocket. But I needed my personal space. Every single time Jason would nod like a good little boy. Promise me everything. But he turned around and told his mother I was a stubborn woman. On the other end of the line, Jason was still running his mouth. Chloe, come on. They're getting old. Their health is going to shape. I can't sleep at night knowing they're out there on their own. I didn't say a word. Just 6 months. Just until the weather warms up, okay? His voice carried that pathetic pleading tone I used to fall for. Did you book their flights? I asked. He paused. Yeah, I did. Understood, I said. Then I hung up. There was no screaming match. No tearing into him. That part of my heart, ground down by 8 years of marital bullshit, had turned completely cold and hard. I didn't have the energy to fight anymore. I popped open my laptop and spent 30 minutes pulling up rental listings in our immediate area. I found a fully furnished 2-bedroom apartment, literally across the street from our building. I texted the link to Jason. This one's perfect. Close enough for you to play nurse first, last and security deposit. I'll cover it all. My phone rang instantly. He was pissed. What the EFF fake is this, Chloe? I told you they are staying at our house. Jason. You know my goddamn bottom line. Can't you compromise for me? They are my parents, for Christ's sake. He yelled. If I compromise, who gives me my space back? I snapped back. Dead silence on both ends. This kind of suffocating silence was taking over our marriage, like a cancer. Finally, he scoffed, I don't care. They stay with us. I already told them. He hung up. It was the first time he had ever hung up on me. I stared at the black screen of my phone and let out a dry, bitter laugh. Fine. You make the call. I'll play along. 2 days later, Jason took the afternoon off to pick them up from the airport. I didn't go. I had an emergency marketing meeting at work. And honestly, it was a convenient truth. When I unlocked my front door that evening, there were 2 unfamiliar, dusty pairs of orthopedic shoes kicked off in the entryway. In my pristine minimalist living room, my custom cream-colored sofa was draped in a hideous, cheap, floral throw blanket that looked like it belonged in a trailer park. On the wall, my expensive abstract canvas had been ripped down and replaced with a massive, tacky wooden live half-love sign. Gary's dented, rusted Yeti tumbler was sweating on my glass coffee table. Brenda's massive crocheting stash was dumped onto my favorite reading chair. Jason's mother, Brenda, waddled out of the kitchen wearing my expensive linen apron. She barely cracked a smile when she saw me. You are back? Yeah. I nodded. His father, Gary, was sunk into the couch, chain-smoking cheap Marlboros while watching Fox News. The entire room smelled like a ficking dive bar. I had explicitly told Jason years ago that I was allergic to cigarette smoke, which was why Jason quit in the first place. Jason jogged out of the guest room sporting a nervous, ass-kissing smile. Chloe, babe. My parents are here. I just stared at him dead. He reached out to grab my hand. I switched my purse to the other hand, dodging him completely. You must be starving. Mom made your favorite heavy meatloaf and mashed potatoes. He pushed on, sweating bullets. 4 of us at the dining table. Brenda unapologetically, aggressively plated a massive greasy slab of meat onto my plate. Eat up, Chloe. Look at you. You're practically skin and bones. Men don't like them that skinny. Bad for having kids. I pushed the plate away. I'm on a diet, Brenda. I don't eat greasy red meat. Her face immediately twisted into a sour prune. Gary hacked up a smoker's cough. City women and their stuck-up diets. Jason scrambled to do damage control. Dad, come on. Chloe's always been clean eating. I barely ate a bite that night. My stomach was in knots with disgust. After dinner, I went straight to the master bedroom. Jason followed me in, closing the door. Chloe, can you at least pretend to be happy? It's their first goddamn day here. I sat at my vanity staring at my reflection. Jason, I can't pretend because this isn't my house anymore. How is it not your house? So she put a blanket on the couch and hung a sign. Where is my painting? I asked. I put it in the garage in my reading chair. Mom said it hurt her back. So I shoved it out on the balcony. And the faking cigarette smoke in my living room. My dad smoked his whole life, Chloe. He can't quit cold turkey. Just suck it up and deal with it. Suck it up. Always the same bullshit. I turned my head and looked at him. Suddenly, a wave of absolute terrifying calmness washed over me. Okay, I whispered. He exhaled a massive breath. Genuinely believing I had submitted. I pulled out my phone and shot a quick text to my mom. Mom, starting tomorrow. I'm coming to your place for dinner every night. The next day I went to work as usual. Processing everything in my head. My job, my marriage and my own damn sanity. The second the clock struck 5. I shut my laptop, grabbed my purse and walked out. Zero hesitation. Pulling out of the parking garage. I didn't turn left toward my house. I turned right straight toward my parents' place in the suburbs. The evening traffic was a bitch. But my chest felt incredibly light. An old rock song played on the radio and I hummed along. Feeling sexier and freer than I had in months. By the time I pulled up to my parents' driveway, the sky was dark. I looked up and saw the warm yellow light glowing from their kitchen window. My mom opened the door. She didn't look shocked at all. She just reached out and took my coat. You're home. Go wash your hands. Dinner's ready. My dad was in the living room watching the game. He glanced at me and asked, You made up your mind? I nodded, yeah. He didn't pry. He just turned the television volume down. My mom had made a whole spread. Grilled steak, roasted asparagus, garlic butter, shrimp. All my absolute favorites. As we ate, my mom piled my plate high. In your own house, you eat what you want. Don't ever let anyone starve you out, baby. I shoved the food in my mouth. My eyes burning with unshed tears. I didn't say a single word about Jason or his toxic-ass parents. My parents didn't ask. We just chatted about the neighbors in the stock market. Like any normal evening at exactly 8 o'clock my phone lit up. It was Jason. Chloe. Where the hell are you? You still at work? The food's been microwaved twice already. He said, sounding exhausted. I'm at my mom's, I replied smoothly. What are you doing over there? He was stunned. Eating dinner. My tone was ice cold. Dead silence on the line. I could picture him standing next to our dining table, looking at the slop his mother cooked, surrounded by his glaring parents. You already ate? Yeah. Why the fake didn't you tell me? His voice cracked, anger bubbling up. I did tell you yesterday. Told me what? He stammered. I told you I'd play along. Play along with what? You decided to move your parents in. I'll play along and let them stay. I decided to eat at my parents' house. I expect you to play along and let me be. The line went completely dead. Nothing but the faint static of a dying connection. Finally, he groaned. Chloe, stop acting like a crazy BFH. I'm not acting crazy. I'm dead serious. Anyway, I'm heading back now. I hung up. My mom was cleaning the dishes. She had heard the whole thing. She dried her hands and walked over. If you don't want to go back to that madhouse, sleep here in your old room. I shook my head. No, Mom. That house is legally mine. Why the fake should I be the one to run away? I wasn't hiding. I was making a point. At 9 o'clock, I pulled into my driveway. The living room lights were blazing. Jason, Gary and Brenda were sitting stiffly on the couch, lined up like a goddamn firing squad. I took off my heels, didn't even glance their way, and walked straight toward my bedroom. Stop right there. Brenda's shrill, grating voice pierced the room. I paused and slowly turned to look at her. What exactly is your problem, Chloe? Is my cooking not good enough for your high-class ass? She spat. Her eyes narrowed into dark little slits. Brenda, I worked late. I grabbed a bite at my parents' place since it was on the way. On the way. Your parents live 30 miles in the opposite direction. Do you think I am faking stupid? Her voice was practically echoing off the walls. Jason yanked on her sleeve. Mom, please just drop it. Why should I drop it? What kind of disrespectful wife does this? We get here and on the very first day, you run away from the dinner table. Who are you trying to embarrass? She ripped her arm away from Jason, stood up and pointed a fat finger right at my face. I didn't run away. I just went somewhere where I actually enjoy the food. You've got a problem with us, don't you? She accused, barking like a rabid dog. I looked at her, then at Gary, who hadn't said a word but was glaring at me like I was garbage. Finally, I locked eyes with Jason. Jason, is this how you feel, too? Jason squirmed under my gaze. His face flushed a dark, angry red, but he couldn't meet my eyes for more than a second. He looked down at the hideous floral throw blanket his mother had draped over my custom sofa, picking at a loose thread. Chloe, just apologize, he muttered, his voice barely louder than a whisper. You were incredibly rude tonight. Mom cooked for 3 hours. A laugh clawed its way up my throat. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp and jagged, like broken glass. Apologize? I repeated, stepping further into the living room. For what? For eating dinner at my own mother's house? Or for not wanting to eat a greasy slab of meat that I explicitly told you I don't eat, Jason? You're disrespecting your elders. Brenda shrieked, taking a step toward me. She looked like she wanted to slap me. In my day, a wife served her husband's family. You should be on your knees thanking us for coming here to help you keep a home. Help me keep a home? I snapped, my voice finally rising, the icy calm shattering. Brenda, I pay the mortgage on this house. I pay the property taxes. I bought that sofa you covered in a $10 rag. I bought the dining table you're currently stinking up with your husband's cigarettes. What exactly are you helping me keep? Gary let out a loud, hacking cough, stubbing out his Marlboro in a pristine glass coaster I had bought in Italy. He didn't even use the ashtray. Listen here, little girl, he growled, his voice rough like sandpaper. You're married to my son. What's yours is his. And what's his is ours. You don't talk to my wife like that under my son's roof. It's not your son's roof, I yelled, finally snapping. The deed is in my name, Gary. I bought this house before I even met Jason. He contributes to the utilities. That's it. The room plunged into a stunned silence. Brenda's jaw literally dropped. Gary's eyes widened, darting toward Jason for confirmation. Jason looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Chloe, why did you have to bring that up? He whined, rubbing his temples. We're a team. It's our house. No, Jason, I said, my voice dropping back to that terrifying, absolute calm. We were a team. Until you unilaterally decided to move your parents in against my expressed boundaries. You made a decision as an individual. So I am reminding you of the facts as an individual. I turned my back on them and walked into the master bedroom. I didn't slam the door. I just shut it quietly and locked it with a definitive click. I leaned against the heavy oak wood, listening to the muffled chaos erupt in the living room. Brenda was shrieking about my disrespect and entitlement. Gary was yelling at Jason for marrying a selfish bitch. And Jason. Jason was apologizing. Not to me. To them. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll talk to her. She's just stressed from work. Just give her time. I promise I'll fix it. I walked into the ensuite bathroom, turned on the shower, and let the scalding water wash over me until my skin turned pink. When I finally stepped out, the house was quiet. I climbed into bed, setting my alarm for 6 a.m. I didn't leave room for Jason on my side. Around 1 a.m., I heard the doorknob jiggle. Then a soft knock. Chloe? Let me in. I didn't answer. Chloe, come on. I'm sleeping on the couch. It smells like Dad's smoke. Good, I thought, pulling the duvet up to my chin. Get used to it. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I stuck to my routine with militant precision. I woke up before they did, made my own coffee in a French press, and left for work. At 5 p.m., I drove to my parents' house. I ate a delicious, quiet dinner, helped my mom with the dishes, maybe watched an episode of Jeopardy with my dad, and drove home at 9 p.m. When I arrived at my house, I walked straight to my bedroom, locked the door, and read a book or watched Netflix on my iPad until I fell asleep. I completely ghosted my own husband and his parents. I didn't argue. I didn't complain about the growing pile of dirty dishes in the sink, the smell of stale tobacco seeping into the drywall, or the fact that Brenda had taken over my laundry room with her massive, weirdly specific loads of crocheted blankets. I simply existed outside of their ecosystem. It was driving Jason absolutely insane. You can't keep doing this, Chloe, he cornered me in the kitchen one Saturday morning as I was pouring my coffee. Brenda and Gary were still asleep in the guest room. He looked awful. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his usually perfectly styled hair was a mess. You haven't eaten a single meal with us in 14 days. You haven't spoken to my parents. They think you hate them. I do hate them, I said casually, taking a sip of my coffee. And I don't particularly like you right now, either. Jason recoiled like I had physically slapped him. Chloe, please. They're my parents. They're old. Dad's emphysema is acting up. Mom's arthritis is bad. I just want them to be comfortable. And I want to be comfortable in the house I pay for, I replied, setting the mug down. I offered you a compromise, Jason. I offered to pay for a fully furnished apartment across the street. You said no. You chose this. So enjoy it. It's not a home if you're treating it like a hotel, he yelled, finally losing his temper. You're punishing me. You're acting like a child throwing a tantrum. A tantrum requires yelling, Jason. I'm perfectly calm, I said, stepping around him. I'm going to a yoga class. I'll be back at 9 o'clock. Don't walk away from me, he grabbed my arm. I stopped dead in my tracks. I looked down at his hand on my bicep, then up at his face. The look in my eyes must have been terrifying, because he instantly let go and stepped back, holding his hands up in a placating gesture. Never touch me in anger, I whispered, my voice venomous. Ever. I grabbed my keys and walked out. The breaking point didn't come from an argument. It came from the mail. A month into the occupation, I came home from my parents' house to find Brenda sitting at my dining table, wearing her reading glasses, sorting through a stack of envelopes. My envelopes. I stopped in the entryway, my blood freezing. What are you doing? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Brenda looked up, not even flinching. She held up a thick envelope from my bank. Just sorting the mail. Looks like your credit card bill came in. You spend an awful lot of money on nonsense, Chloe. $800 at a Nordstrom last month? No wonder Jason is always so stressed about money. She had opened my bank statement. The icy calm that had sustained me for a month evaporated in a blinding flash of white-hot rage. I walked over to the table, snatched the statement out of her hand, and scooped the rest of my mail into my arms. How dare you open my mail, I hissed, my hands shaking. That is a federal offense, Brenda. Oh, don't be so dramatic, she scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. We're family. We don't keep secrets in this family. Jason told me to help organize the bills since he pays them. Jason doesn't pay my credit card, I practically growled. I do. With the money from my job. The job I go to while you sit in my house and destroy my property. Destroy your property? Gary bellowed from the living room, pausing Fox News. He hauled his heavy frame off the couch, a lit cigarette dangling from his lips. Who the hell do you think you are, talking to my wife like that? You spoiled, arrogant little brat. He marched into the dining room, his chest puffed out, aggressively invading my personal space. The smell of cheap tobacco and stale beer hit my face like a physical blow. You've been nothing but a disrespectful bitch since we got here. Gary yelled, pointing a thick, calloused finger directly between my eyes. You ignore us. You insult my wife's cooking. You lock yourself in that room like a princess. You're a terrible wife to my son. If I were Jason, I would have slapped some sense into you years ago. I didn't back down. I didn't flinch. I looked at the burning ember of his cigarette, inches from my face, and then looked directly into his bloodshot eyes. Get out of my house, I said. Gary laughed. A cruel, ugly, hacking sound. Make me, sweetheart. My son lives here. This is his home. We ain't going anywhere. Jason. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Jason. Get out here now. A door down the hall slammed open, and Jason came sprinting into the dining room. He stopped dead when he saw the scene, his father looming over me, cigarette ash falling onto the hardwood floor, his mother sitting smugly at the table, and me, vibrating with a rage so profound it felt like I was going to spontaneously combust. What's going on? Jason panicked, looking between the three of us. Your mother opened my mail, I said, my voice trembling with adrenaline. And your father just threatened to hit me. Jason turned pale. Dad, did you say that? I told her what she needed to hear. Gary barked, not breaking eye contact with me. She needs to learn her place, Jason. You've let her run wild. She thinks she owns the world just because her name is on a piece of paper. Jason looked at his dad. Then he looked at me. I could see the gears turning in his head. The pathetic, cowardly gears of a man who had spent his entire life terrified of his overbearing parents. Chloe. Jason started, his voice weak. They're just old-fashioned. They don't mean it like that. Mom was just trying to be helpful with the mail. And Dad. Dad's just protective. Please, just calm down. He chose them. Again. In that exact moment, a switch flipped in my brain. The 8 years of history, the love I once felt, the hope that we could fix this, it all evaporated. It was just gone. Replaced by a cold, calculating, absolute finality. Okay, I said quietly. Gary smirked, taking a long drag of his cigarette. See? She just needs a firm hand. I turned around, walked into the master bedroom, and grabbed an overnight bag from the top of the closet. I didn't pack much. Just enough clothes for a week, my laptop, my passport, and my jewelry box. When I walked back out, Jason was standing in the hallway, his eyes wide with panic. Chloe? What are you doing? Where are you going? I'm leaving, Jason, I said, walking past him toward the front door. You can't leave. This is your house, he pleaded, trailing behind me. You're right. It is my house, I said, pausing at the entryway to slip on my shoes. I looked him dead in the eye. And tomorrow morning, my lawyer will be contacting you to start the eviction process for your parents, and the divorce proceedings for us. Jason physically stumbled backward, grabbing the wall for support. Divorce? Chloe, no. You can't be serious. Over an argument? Over my parents visiting? It's not a visit, Jason. It's an occupation. And you are a coward. I opened the front door. The cool night air hit my face, and it felt like absolute freedom. You have 30 days to get them out. Or I'll have the sheriff remove them. Enjoy your family. I slammed the door behind me, got into my car, and drove away. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt like I had just cut off a gangrenous limb, and the fever was finally breaking. The next morning, I sat in the plush, leather-bound office of Marcus Vance, the most ruthless, highly rated divorce attorney in the city. I had researched him months ago, during one of Jason and my earlier fights about his parents, but I had never had the guts to call him. Until today. Marcus was a shark in a tailored Armani suit. He listened to my story without interrupting, taking meticulous notes on a legal pad. The house is solely in your name, he asked, tapping his expensive pen against the desk. Bought it 3 years before we married, I confirmed. He's never been put on the deed. Excellent. Did you sign a prenuptial agreement? No. Marcus frowned slightly. That complicates things, but not entirely. Because the house is a premarital asset, it remains yours. However, the appreciation in value during the 8 years of marriage could be considered marital property. We'll have to buy him out of that percentage. I don't care, I said flatly. I have the savings. I want him gone. And I want his parents out of my house immediately. The parents are technically tenants at will, even without a lease, because your husband invited them to stay. We have to follow formal eviction procedures. I'll have my paralegal draft a 30-day notice to quit and serve them by process server this afternoon. As for the divorce petition, I can have that filed by tomorrow. Marcus leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Chloe, I need to prepare you. When men like your husband are backed into a corner, especially with domineering parents involved, things get incredibly ugly. They will drag this out. They will try to destroy your character. Are you ready for a war? I thought of Gary blowing smoke in my face in my own dining room. I thought of Brenda opening my bank statements. I thought of Jason telling me to suck it up while they destroyed the sanctuary I had worked my entire life to build. Marcus, I said, my voice steady and cold as ice. I want to scorch the earth. The process server arrived at my house at exactly 4 p.m. that afternoon. I wasn't there, but my security cameras, which I had secretly activated remotely from my phone, recorded the entire beautiful event. I sat in my old childhood bedroom at my parents' house, watching the live feed on my laptop. The server, a large, intimidating man in a cheap suit, knocked loudly on the front door. Jason answered, looking disheveled. Jason Miller, the server asked. Yeah? Who are you? You've been served. The man shoved a thick manila envelope against Jason's chest and walked away. Jason opened the envelope. I watched his face on the high-definition camera. The color completely drained from his skin. He stumbled back into the house, leaving the front door wide open. A minute later, my phone started blowing up. Call after call. Text after text. Chloe, please. You can't be serious. An eviction notice? To my parents? We can fix this. Let's go to counseling. Please answer the phone. I'm begging you. I silenced the phone and tossed it onto the bed. My mom walked into the room, holding 2 mugs of tea. She glanced at the screen, saw the 30 missed calls, and smiled grimly. The trash taking itself out, she asked, handing me a mug. Something like that, I replied, taking a sip. It's going to get messy, Mom. Good, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Your father and I never liked him, Chloe. We kept our mouths shut because you loved him. But Jason is a weak man. And a weak man will always let his mother run his wife's life. We have your back. Whatever you need. The next 30 days were a descent into madness for Jason and his parents. They didn't move. Of course they didn't. They dug their heels in, furious and entitled. Brenda started posting passive-aggressive, unhinged rants on Facebook. Can't believe the generation today. A mother raises a son, gives him everything, and his snobby, stuck-up wife tries to throw an old woman out on the street. Praying for my son, who is trapped in an abusive marriage with a narcissistic, barren woman. The barren comment was a low blow. Jason and I had struggled to conceive for 2 years before we gave up. He had told his mother in confidence. She was weaponizing my trauma on social media for sympathy from her knitting circle. I didn't respond. I took screenshots, sent them to Marcus, and added them to the growing file of evidence for the divorce proceedings. Jason tried to play the victim to our mutual friends. A few of them texted me, asking why I was being so harsh. I didn't argue with them. I just sent them the security camera footage of Gary threatening me in my dining room while Jason stood there like a coward. The mutual friends stopped texting me. And they stopped answering Jason's calls. On day 28 of the eviction notice, I received an email from Jason's lawyer. He had finally hired some cheap strip mall attorney. The email was a demand letter. Jason was claiming that because he had contributed to the utilities and general maintenance of the house, he was entitled to 50% of its total equity, not just the appreciation. Furthermore, he was demanding I pay him spousal support, claiming my abrupt abandonment had caused him severe emotional distress, rendering him unable to work efficiently. I forwarded the email to Marcus with a single line, "Destroy him." Marcus was a maestro. He didn't just reply to the lawyer, he launched a legal carpet bombing campaign. Through forensic accounting, which I happily paid top dollar for, Marcus discovered that Jason had been quietly funneling marital funds into a secret savings account for the past 3 years. Nearly $40,000. When confronted during a mandatory deposition, Jason cracked under Marcus's brutal cross-examination. He admitted he was saving the money to eventually buy a house for his parents, using our joint funds, without my knowledge. That revelation blew his demand for 50% equity out of the water. It was financial infidelity. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, looked at Jason with absolute disgust during our preliminary hearing. "Mr. Miller," she said, peering over her glasses. "You secretly siphon marital funds to support your parents, move them into a premarital asset owned solely by your wife against her express wishes, fail to protect her from verbal abuse by your father, and now you are requesting alimony?" Jason shrank into his chair. "Your Honor, I." Motion for spousal support denied, the judge snapped, slamming her gavel. "And the eviction order stands. Your parents have exactly 48 hours to vacate the premises, or they will be escorted out by law enforcement. We will reconvene next month to finalize the asset division, which will heavily factor in your hidden accounts. I walked out of the courthouse feeling like I was floating on air. Marcus patted me on the shoulder, a rare, genuine smile on his shark-like face. Told you. Scorched earth. 2 days later, at exactly 10 a.m., I drove back to my house. I didn't go alone. I brought 2 local sheriff's deputies, just in case. When I pulled into the driveway, Jason's car was parked on the lawn, the trunk open. Boxes were scattered everywhere. Brenda was standing on the porch, holding her ugly floral throw blanket, sobbing hysterically. Gary was hacking up a lung, violently throwing suitcases into the back of his rusty pickup truck. Jason was carrying a box of his clothes out the front door. He looked utterly defeated. He had lost weight, his face was pale, and he looked 10 years older than the man I had married. He stopped when he saw my car pull up. The deputies stepped out first, followed by me. "We're leaving," Jason muttered, his voice devoid of any emotion. "You don't need the cops." "I don't trust your father, Jason," I said coldly. "And I want to make sure you don't take anything that belongs to me." "You wicked, wicked girl!" Brenda shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "God will punish you for what you've done to this family. You've ruined my son." "No, Brenda," I said, walking slowly up the driveway, stopping a few feet from her. "You ruined your son. You raised a man who doesn't know how to be a husband, because you never let him stop being your little boy. You destroyed his marriage." "Not me." Gary took a step toward me, his fists clenched, but one of the deputies instantly stepped between us, resting his hand casually on his duty belt. "Sir," the deputy warned, "I suggest you finish packing." Gary spat on my immaculate lawn, turned around, and got into the driver's seat of his truck. "Get in, Brenda. We don't need this trash." Brenda shot me one last venomous glare before waddling down the steps and getting into the truck. Gary slammed it into gear and tore out of the driveway, leaving black tire marks on the asphalt. Jason stood alone on the porch, holding his box. He looked at the house, then at me. "Where are you going to go?" I asked, a tiny, residual shred of pity surfacing in my chest. "I rented a cheap 2-bedroom apartment," he said quietly. "For me and them. It's all I could afford after the lawyer fees." "The one across the street?" I asked. He let out a dry, pathetic laugh. "No. I couldn't afford that one. It's in the industrial park. Next to the highway." "I see. Chloe." Jason set the box down on the porch. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with genuine, agonizing regret. "I messed up. I know I did. I was trying to make everyone happy. And I ended up losing the only person who actually mattered." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I had shared 8 years of my life with. The man I had bought this house with the intention of filling with children and memories. "You didn't try to make everyone happy, Jason," I said softly but firmly. "You tried to make the loudest people happy so you wouldn't have to deal with the conflict. You sacrificed me on the altar of your parents' entitlement because it was easier than standing up to them." He bowed his head, a single tear slipping down his cheek. "Is there any chance, ever?" "No," I said. "The papers will be finalized next month. Leave your key on the counter." I walked past him, stepping into my house. The smell of stale smoke hit me instantly. The living room was a disaster. The floors were scuffed, the kitchen was coated in a layer of grease, and my beautiful reading chair on the balcony was ruined by the rain. But as I stood in the center of the living room, listening to Jason's car engine start up and drive away, I didn't feel despair. I felt ownership. I walked over to the front door, locked the deadbolt, and leaned against the wood. The house was completely silent. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I spent the next week hiring a professional cleaning crew. They scrubbed the walls, steam cleaned the carpets, and ran industrial ozone generators to kill the smell of Gary's cigarettes. I threw out the sofa Brenda had ruined and ordered a stunning, expensive Italian leather sectional to replace it. I retrieved my abstract painting from the garage and hung it right back where it belonged. When the divorce was finalized, the judge ruled heavily in my favor. Thanks to Jason's financial deceit, he was ordered to pay my attorney fees, and he walked away with a fraction of the house's equity, barely enough to cover his own legal debts. 6 months later, I was sitting on my new sofa, sipping a glass of expensive Pinot Noir, scrolling through my phone. I had blocked Jason and his family on everything, but mutual friends occasionally sent me updates. The industrial park apartment was a disaster. According to the grapevine, Gary's smoking indoors had violated their lease, and they were facing eviction again. Brenda and Jason were screaming at each other daily. Jason had taken up drinking, looking bloated and miserable. He was stuck in the hell he had chosen. I set my phone down on the pristine glass coffee table. The evening sun was streaming through the large bay windows, casting a warm, golden glow across my immaculate living room. I took a deep breath. The air smelled like lavender and expensive wood polish. No smoke. No grease. No screaming. Just me, my space, and absolute, unbroken peace.